essentially the thing was that if I am wearing the same uniform, doing the same job,
Yeah.
why am I being addressed as a lady? I'm crossing the bridge and there's a man lying on the road dead. I have also survived a mugging, to be fair. I've
Okay.
faced it. I've been beaten up, left on the road with two broken ribs, a cut on my, cheek.
Joining Navy, right? And at that time, many women were not opting for that kind of a career,
No.
right? Today it is. It's an illustrious career, and there is that pay equality and inclusion, and all of that is happening, which is heartening to see. How was that time for you? Because, talking about those years where, you would hardly find women actually taking that choice of joining any of the three types of armed forces. Uh, how was that for you, specifically in a so-called male-dominated space?
Yeah, so I think, the term career was not really something I related to for the military at that
Okay.
point. I think we were more about, I'm sorry to say, I mean, हमारी generation, yes, we were like more focused towards uh, doing our bit. The patriotism factor was slightly higher,
Hmm.
not slightly, actually, a whole lot higher. We just were idealistic, right?
Okay.
So my joining the armed forces, because I knew it was a 7-year contract at that point, for me, it was never about really a career part. I think it was a privilege and an honor. I just, it was a huge struggle, no doubt, because I'm from the third batch.
Okay.
So my senior and I, we are the only two women from that same college who have joined.
Okay.
So it's interesting to see that how times have changed, how we look at it as a career now, and not per se as a service, which is kind of a privilege and an honor to serve. So mindsets change.
Hmm.
So um, during my time, it was definitely a struggle because the rules were not being made. Opinions were not really being taken in terms of perspectives for how women need to be in the armed forces. Uh, where we didn't really create those rules, there were a lot of areas where I think men also felt disgruntled that the parameters of measures of success and productivity differed for women than men. But then none of us signed up for mollycoddling, honestly. So there was this huge struggle at that particular point of time. We would be addressed as, okay, someone would be addressing you as officers and ladies. And I'm like, excuse me, we are all officers. So there was a lot of interruption that had to happen, corrections that had to happen because the pay scale was the same.
Hmm.
The uniforms were literally the same, except hatefully to wear the sari was a difficult thing. But essentially, the thing was that if I am wearing the same uniform, doing the same job,
Yeah.
why am I being addressed as a lady? So that is where the gender equity thing was there. It was a huge struggle. Now I don't think, I think there's a lot of privilege. There's a lot of changes that have occurred in the armed forces. And I believe the Air Force is really at the helm. Despite me being in the Navy, I can say that because Air Force has always, supported equity in women
Hmm.
far more than men.
Yeah.
Although, they also have taken time, and struggled a lot in terms of getting to that space. But it was a huge struggle. I mean, I've served on a ship where there were 252 of us, 12 officers. Rest of them were sailors. All the sailors are men.
Wow.
Among the 12 officers, there were two of us. One was a doctor and one was me, and the rest were
Wow.
all men. And we're just two women on the ship, and we served. And then the Navy stopped taking women on ships for almost 20 years, and now they've started again. So that's a great move.
And talking about Nigeria, I have heard some horror stories from my colleagues when they've traveled for work, right? Unfortunately, that place has been muddled with a lot of cartels or
Yes.
people who are dangerous and can cause harm, specifically for tourists. And I've had friends who've been either abducted or murdered, or I've had colleagues who talk about the horror stories, like when they landed at the airport, they were escorted by people carrying guns because it was unsafe, specifically for tourists. And you've been to Nigeria a lot, uh,
Yes.
right? As part, not once, you've been to multiple times, like from your career perspective. So, are you
Yes.
a Nigeria pro or a Nigerian pro? I would say, and you just said that you would love to go back. So, would love to get
It
your
is.
experience and your thoughts on that part of the world?
Nigeria has every possibility of safety and non-safety, as much as India has in certain regions. So let's put it that way. I would love to go back to Nigeria, and it is my second home country. Let me put it that way. I say that because I spent a decade there working.
Yeah.
In fact, when I went, I remember giving my passport to the travel agent who was supposed to work on my visa. And he said, "Why are you going to Nigeria?" I'm like, "For work." He's like, "Are you nuts? Is there somebody else going with you?" I'm like, "No, I'm going on a work visa." He said, "I've never done a work visa for a woman going to Nigeria, ever." I'm like, "Well, there's a first time. Here you go." So that is where I started with. When I landed in Nigeria that day, I remember I had somebody from the office coming in to receive me. He was another veteran from the Navy. But I remember it was raining, pouring, and I'm crossing the third mainland bridge. I'm trying to pull down the window, and he says, "Don't pull down the window, it's not safe." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm crossing the bridge, and there's a man lying on the road, dead in the pouring rain, and nobody is stopping. And I'm like, "Hey, there's a guy there, in the rain. He might be injured. He might just be alive. Can we just help him out?" He said, "No, we don't stop." So that was the first lesson I received even before I reached my, office and the apartment I was staying in. I had to lock my apartment in 7 spots. It was like being in a prison,
Wow.
That's how I started with the first month of my stay there. And it grows on you, though, Nigeria. And I love the people there. I think learning to be happy-go-lucky has come from them. I have taken on probably the best that Nigeria has had to give. I have also survived a mugging, to be fair. I've faced it. I've been beaten up, left on the road with 2 broken ribs, a cut on my, cheek, beaten up with an iron rod.
Do you want to share what happened?
Yeah, so I was stuck, friends come over on Saturday night, and we usually hang out at my place. And 2 of them had a fight that evening, and they said, "We're not coming." So because that one dropped out, another one dropped out, another one dropped out. So this is a group of 4 of us friends. So I said, "Okay, fine, then I'm driving back home." So usually on Saturdays, the driver, I let him off early because we drive back together as a group, so it's okay. And that evening, I was the only one driving back. I had a red-colored Kia Picanto, I still remember, and I was stuck in traffic between a lot of taxis, a lot of yellow cabs. And a group of Nigerian men were robbing an entire apartment on the opposite side of the road, which was absolutely empty. So when they came out robbing the apartment, they saw a red car and a foreigner sitting inside, and that was it. So I got attacked. I lost a laptop. I lost about $2,500 cash. I broke my glasses. The only thing that remained was my iPod, which is like a nano little one. I still remember I was dragged out of the car. The window was broken. I was dragged out. The thing is, you should not see their face. Don't look at them when this is happening. You need to just hand over what you have. They didn't give me time enough to hand over, and I got beaten up for that. So I was kicked so hard that I broke 2 ribs, and I had glass all over me on one side. And I realized that this is not going to work for me. If I need to survive this, I really need to think what I have to do. And I pretended, I stopped breathing, and I pretended to play dead, literally. So they actually checked if I had breath. And I got another 2 set of kicks after that, and I refused. I was just totally limp. I let my muscles go completely. And once I saw them drive off, that's the time. And one of them dragged, he says, "Okay, let's go. We've got what we wanted." And that's when I got up, and people were shocked because they thought I was actually dead. But none of them helped out. I asked for a phone to call my friends, and nobody would help you out. So I actually drove the car like that, literally blind, because my glasses weren't there anymore. Drove home and then called my friends. So yeah, I survived that. I didn't drive for about a week. And I said, "Chuck it. I need to get back on the wheel," because I love driving. For me, it's like the most, free space that I have. And I said, "I'm going to get back to driving." So after a week, I was back on the road again. So that was me and the mugging incident.